Okay.
Good evening, Bob.
I'm here, but my video is not starting for some reason.
Okay.
We can hear you at least.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming to join us for Upper Darby Township Council meeting for October 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. At this point in time, we should stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I just wanted to let all of council know that I've asked Councilman Gwynn to say the Pledge of Allegiance on our behalf since we have problems being in sync with each other. So if you want to say it, you're welcome to, but Councilman Gwynn's going to say it for us. So please stand in respect for the flag that the mayor has.
Where is the mayor's flag?
Be on the desk behind her. In the bookshelf
Ready?
behind her. Look at the mayor's screen. Go ahead when you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, life and liberty for all.
Thank you very much. And if we can remain standing for a moment of silence for those who have been lost. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Okay. We call the meeting to order. Councilwoman Billups, if you can give the roll call.
Yes, thank you, Council President Wentz. Councilman Tunis,
Here.
Councilwoman Billups is here. Councilman Silva,
Yes, I am here.
thank you. Councilwoman Blackwell,
Here.
Whoa.
Councilman Gwynn,
Present.
Councilman Burke,
Present.
Councilman Siddiq,
Yes,
Councilwoman Faralia,
She is excused absence for the moment. She will join us in the near future.
okay,
So put her down as excused, and then she will hopefully join us before
Okay.
the meeting is over.
Councilman Barnett,
Here.
Councilman Wagner,
Here.
and Council President Wentz.
Here.
All present and accounted for, except for Councilwoman Faralia, who is excused.
Great. Thank you. So next up, we have the rules of meeting decorum. Upper Darby Township Council and residents will maintain professional respect for each other. Council encourages free speech, however, civility is required, which would prohibit threats, profanity, scandalous, impertinent, and redundant comment, or any comment the discernible purpose of which is to disrupt or prevent the conduct of business of the meeting. Okay, Ms. Dobbins, if you can lead us in public comment, and if all council members can mute your mics so that, except for Councilwoman Billups, because she and I are our timers for the round. So let's set up our timers. Okay, Ms. Dobbins, go ahead.
Gwen Gregory, 31 Overhill Road, Upper Darby, PA. With what appears to be an increase in rental housing in the area, the exterior of these homes are not being maintained and reflects poorly on the overall neighborhood. Parking vehicles that in some cases block neighboring driveways, lawn debris, lack of adherence to bulk trash disposal, and lack of maintenance on external edifices are all examples that negatively impact the value of surrounding properties. How are the rental owners held accountable for reasonable maintenance and addressing the issues noted? End of comment.
Thank you. We'll definitely look into that. Next, or hold on, let me restart my clock. And next.
Next comment, Olivia Taylor, 204 Kent Road, Upper Darby, PA. Members of council, it has been brought to my attention that the masjid, also known as the mosque, located here, 201 South 69th Street, wants to broadcast their prayers over an amplified sound system starting at 5 a.m. The idea of such a thing is unfathomable, and we are a multicultural community with numerous religious beliefs, such as Christianity, Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, Greek, Russian, etc. The mosque does not have to right to impose their beliefs into our lives and affect the quality of living. For the most part, this area is quiet, nice area to live in. I can't stress this enough. This is a residential area. This is not a third world country, and it will not be turned into one. There is an ordinance that's in place. I hope this administration enforces it until such time when the courts open back up. I, along with residents from Powell Lane, Barrington, Kent, Heather Road, Sampson, can and will go to court and file a cease and desist order to stop them or any other religious group who wants to impose their beliefs into our lives. Thank you, Olivia Taylor. P.S. The upperdarby.org website, specifically the page for a right to know request form, has technical problems. When filling out the application for a request form, it is not allowing anyone to fill out their information. Please look into this. End of comment. And that concludes all comments for this evening.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
May I make a comments on this?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the amplifier. They must do not use 5 o'clock or any other time. They have their own system. They're inside the mosques, not outside, nowhere else. So
Okay.
amplifier 5 p.m. you do not use it. It's not correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. And as far as the right to know requests, I believe we will definitely look into it. Is that fair to say, CAO? Yep, great. Great, well, thank you very much. That was a lot shorter than I thought it would be. Okay, great. So next up, we have the Honorable Mayor Barbara Ann Keffer. Take it away, Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to keep this as short as possible because we have the budget presentation tonight by our Director of Finance, Gary Marin, and immediately following, we have a capital improvement budget presentation by Melissa Hughes of PFM Financial Advisors, a firm that has worked with our township on a number of bond issues. I just wanted to let you know about the status of several township projects. First is the Cobbs Creek Interceptor Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project, and that's been awarded with a $272,944 cost paid out from Community Development Block Grants, also known as CDBG, which is also sometimes referred to as HUD grants. This project consists of relining 584 linear feet of existing pipe. Number 2 is the streetscape improvements to the 300 block of Edmonds Avenue at the Garrett Firehouse at a total of $175,405. And that's funded by a multimodal grant and township liquid fuel funds. And this work is slated to begin the week of October 26th. Number 3 is the Fernwood Cemetery Stormwater Sewer Pipe Repair Project, which costs a total of $600,000 to $750,000 of CDBG funds, and that's also slated to begin at the end of this month. Number 4 is a street resurfacing and ADA compliant curb ramp project, which entails paving over 6 miles of streets and over 300 curb ramps. And that will be funded by Aqua and PICO reimbursements, CDBG funds, and capital improvement funds. And that project went out to bid on October 13th. Number 5 is the Community Center Feasibility Study for the site of the current Welcome Center on 7000 Walnut Street. And that is in its conceptual design phase. We anticipate and welcome eliciting public input on the center in early to mid 2021. Lastly, tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., there will be a public hearing via Zoom on the CDBG action plan for year 46. Please email requests or comments to request@upperdarby.org. And also interested parties may also comment in writing to the Township of Upper Darby. Attention, Kathleen Houlihan of Dunleavy Associates. And her email address is KOULAHAN@yahoo.com. The plan has been advertised in the Delco Times and can now be found on the Township website from the homepage under Residents. In the drop menu, select Community Development, and you can find the plan there. And that's it for tonight's updates. And I'll turn the meeting over to our CAO, Vincent Rangioni.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor. Council President, I see some hands up. I don't know if you want me to proceed or how to handle that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just noticed. I'm sorry. Don, you had a question about what the mayor just said?
I do, Madam President. Mayor, the grant for the firehouse, the Garriford firehouse, that is for improvements in the street, I believe along the sidewalk, if I remember correctly from, I mean, that's been in the works for, I guess we got the funding last year. But what does that cover, which I don't believe it does, and thus another question, does it cover the apron between the sidewalk and the doors to the firehouse apparatus bays, which we had planned to fund as a township for the fire company?
Well, that's a great question. And I'll answer it as best I can and then turn it over to Vincent Rangioni. The scope of the project, I don't believe includes the apron. I'm not sure that the apron was part of that plan altogether or financed by the grants and such.
I do believe you're correct in that.
Great. Vincent?
Yeah, so that's correct. And so what we ended up doing was we actually bid the apron as a separate piece, and we have a meeting scheduled with the fire company to discuss how we might be able to get that funded in addition to the improvements. Most of the improvements are actually across the street in the parking lot and the sidewalk, as you mentioned. Yeah, so we bid it as a separate piece, and we have a meeting scheduled with them to discuss how we might be able to get it funded.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Anyone else? Councilman Burke?
Thanks, President Wentz. The question on the ADA curb ramps, we're only doing the ramps that the streets were paved already. Is that correct? Or?
We're doing the ramps on the streets that we are paving.
Okay.
So yeah, in the past, it's not something that we've always done or that we've even often done. And actually, there was a question at the last meeting about a situation where the level of the ramp and the level of the road had become such an issue. And it's a significant investment in the township. Those ramps, if you figure they're $5,000 a ramp and there's 4 of them on every corner, it can accelerate the cost of the paving program pretty quickly, but it's a very important investment in ADA accessibility and walkability, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely a priority in the mayor's administration.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we were doing it where we already paved and not places that be paved 2 years from now.
Right. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much, Council President. And of course, thank you, Mayor Keffer. I will also try to be brief here, but I do want to acknowledge some folks and say some thank yous. This presentation that you're about to hear from Gary Marin is certainly the product of the significant work on his part. But I also want to thank our department heads who all participated in the process, and Debbie Nifong and Allison Dobbins, who sat through many hours of meetings and poured over details with our various department heads to come up with what we believe is a really impressive and excellent product. We're certainly hopeful that there's more and better information, cleaner data in an easily readable format than we've had in the past. And that's certainly a goal that the mayor put to us as the staff to deliver an excellent and digestible product. And so I did want to say thank you to all of our staff. Again, department heads, Allison Dobbins, Debbie Nifong, and of course, our new finance director, Gary Marin. So I had a chance to say a few words about Gary when he got confirmed, but I think in advance of his presentation, I just want to reiterate some of his professional background and experience, because even though he's only been with the township for about 6 weeks, and he's certainly done yeoman's work to pull this together in only 6 weeks, that's not by accident. Gary has 30+ years experience as a senior management executive. He's a certified public accountant. He has served in roles such as chief financial officer, senior vice president, chief operating officer, and including senior managing director and global head of financial management for Cushman & Wakefield, which is an $8.8 billion commercial real estate firm. So we're incredibly fortunate to have the kind of technical expertise that Gary brings to this data and this analysis. And with all that said, it's important to note that the budgetary process is a collaborative process, and this is a working document and something that we will continue to refine and improve over time. But again, to be able to have right here in our backyard in Drexel Hill, a resident of multi-billion-dollar financial operations is a great benefit to the township. So with that, I will turn it over to Gary Marin.
Here we go. Vince, thank you. That was the kindest intro I've ever personally experienced. Good evening, everyone.
You're very welcome.
My pleasure to participate in this process tonight. As you all know by now, I've been with Upper Darby for just about 6 weeks in the role of finance director, and have been working during this time to learn the policies, procedures, systems, and methods of township record keeping. My role in this, the annual budget process, is to study the township's financial track record as reflected in our books and records, to work with the department heads in capturing their assumptions for the coming year, and to reflect the newly defined operating structure and policies of Mayor Keffer and CAO Rangione. In this role, I've been building Excel models that capture, analyze, and project financial activity for our payroll process and for our overall operating activities. Now, first, a few words about my process. The books and records of Upper Darby Township contain significant detail, which poses quite a challenge in making a concise but accurate presentation. In my opinion, having reviewed prior year presentations in considerable detail, I find them to tell an incomplete story, to contain several errors and internal inconsistencies, and to distract with statistics that may be interesting, but direct the audience away from the bottom line, all of which potentially leads viewers to draw wrong conclusions. To try and correct for this, parts of my presentation will provide greater detail than has been shown in prior years, and may take some focus on your part to absorb all of the information on certain slides. My method in gathering and presenting this data is to look at a 5-year period with actual financing activity financial activity for the years 2016 through 2019, followed by the adopted budget for 2020, and then the 9-month actual results for the current year. In this context, 2021 should make more sense. Now, let me find this presentation. Here you go. All right, can everybody see the screen? Well, thank you. This will be a little dry. I'll do my best to keep your attention. The first slide shows revenues by source and expenses by governmental function combined across all funds to reflect the aggregate surplus or deficit for the township. You'll see that 2016 and 2017 operated at a surplus, 2018 at a deficit, and 2019 at appreciably a break even. The 2020 budget reflects a $4.2 million deficit, with year-to-date actuals showing a significant surplus. There'll be more on both of these items later in the presentation. For 2021, we offer a proposed budget that anticipates slightly better than break-even performance. The last two columns present each budgeted line item first as a percentage of the total budgeted spend for 2021, and second as a percentage of the amount budgeted in 2020 for this same line item. This column format is used throughout the budget model at all levels of summary and detail in the hope of easily addressing any questions you may have. Now let's look at the 2021 budget. First, as currently proposed, this budget contains no increase in tax revenue or fees. To the extent that these line items show an increase over the 2020 budget, that simply reflects our increased focus on collection activity. The increase in revenue from grants reflects the administration's intended efforts in pursuing grant revenues that are available to us. The decrease in other revenues reflects significant over budgeting of certain revenues for 2020, which again, I will address further a little later in the presentation. As for expenses, you'll note that only license and inspection shows an increase, which reflects the administration's focus on hiring inspectors to further ensure code enforcement. Administrative services, general government, debt service, and other reflect significant decreases, mostly due to common sense cost controls. Again, as I said earlier, this slide is rich with information as to what drives our budgeting process. The second slide is a pie chart of township revenues by source. Clearly, Upper Darby is powered primarily by property taxes, trash fees, and sewer fees. The next few slides take a closer look at each of these revenue streams. This next slide takes a deeper dive into real property taxes. The millage, aggregate assessed value, and gross billing can be tracked across time, showing mostly moderate increases from year to year. Please note that the 2021 assessed value has not yet been finalized and that the court-mandated county assessment is designed to be revenue neutral across the township. That said, it will have differing impacts on individual households. To the extent that gross billings for 2021 show a modest increase over 2020, this is simply a function of houses that have been sold and thus reflect an increased value. More importantly, you'll see an increase in current and delinquent tax collections, again, pursuant to our increased focus on collections activity. The outlier in reviewing prior year results is the 2020 collection of delinquencies. This rather large amount is the result of our collection agents' first year efforts. The fourth slide analyzes trash fees. This slide shows the number of units billed having remained virtually constant, with fee increases passed in 2016 and in 2019 for effect in 2017 and 2020 respectively. The only true variable has been collection of delinquent fees, which generally follow the same trend line as with real estate taxes, emphasizing collections. Slide number 5 analyzes sewer fees in much the same way as with trash fees. The number of units billed remains fairly constant, with a fee increase passed in 2019 for effect in 2020. The increase in collection activity is once again apparent. On this slide, however, you see the additional component of reimbursements from neighboring municipalities. Specifically, East Lansdowne, Milburn, Haverford, and Yeadon pay for the use of our pipes to transfer their wastewater for treatment. These reimbursements help to defray our sewage costs. Slide 6 is a pie chart of township expenses by government function. Clearly, the largest functions by far are public safety, made up of police and fire, and public works, with all other government functions making up less than a quarter of the total budget. And the next slide, also a pie chart, shows these same expenses by type of expense. In this case, with the largest pieces being personnel costs and contractual services. So herein lies the real message of the township's cost structure, the people we employ. And so with the next 2 slides, let's take a look at the various components of personnel costs. First, looking at the total cost of these components by government function. With a full complement of 133 full-time officers, plus several civilian employees, our police department is rightly the largest segment of each personnel cost component. Although police overtime remains quite significant, the administration has worked closely with the superintendent of police to launch policies which have brought down overtime throughout the course of 2020 and for all of 2021. Police overtime was $1.9 million in 2019, budgeted for $2 million in 2020, but will finish the year at $1,660,000 with a 2021 budget of $1,630,000. Fire department overtime is a much tougher nut to crack. In order to meet contractually based minimum staffing standards, we've had to incur significant overtime. This line item has run well in excess of $1 million annually in every year since 2017 and is now being addressed in our hiring initiative. As every full day of overtime costs the township $1,735, the annual cost of one firefighter paid out as overtime equals $633,275. Given an all-in cost of approximately $215,000 per fireman, we could hire 3 full-time firemen for each one who is paid via overtime. The mayor and CAO are working together with our new fire chief to address this issue on a structural basis. The next large personnel cost components are health insurance and pension plans. Revisiting our health insurance program is a major initiative for this coming year. These numbers are quite large, especially in the police and fire departments, as well as in public works. And the time has come to reassess our self-insurance program. The pension plans are another area of real concern. The issue here relates to minimal funding over as many years as we can track. This is a priority for Mayor Keffer, and her administration is working to address it. With the next slide, we'll take a closer look at average costs per employee, but organized by bargaining unit. This slide provides an estimate of all personnel cost components arrayed in accordance with the previous slide, but allows us to more closely examine certain contractual aspects of our personnel costs as the township works with 4 separate unions in managing our staff. Please note that with the exception of a handful of non-union management employees, this slide reflects fixed cost components that are driven by contract. This slide revisits the cost and associated fees for trash collection. It's included in tonight's presentation in order to focus everyone on a pricing issue for future years, not to suggest a fee increase for 2021. The method that has been in place for pricing trash fees has been to examine only certain direct costs. These costs include salaries, overtime, clothing, supplies, disposal, recycling, and other lesser expenses. As you can see by comparing projected fees with projected direct costs, the fees appreciably cover those costs. That said, by previous design, all costs of health insurance, life insurance, pensions, and workers' compensation, other than those of police and fire, have been lumped together into miscellaneous expenses within the general fund. To clean this up, we're in the process of allocating these costs to the appropriate governmental functions. In total, these costs are just over $10 million, with $2.9 million attributable to the employees who collect our trash. On this slide, these allocated personnel costs are shown as the second line item under trash collection costs. Furthermore, the maintenance of our trash trucks has been grouped with the maintenance of other township vehicles within an area of public works called vehicle maintenance. Currently, vehicle maintenance cares for 258 vehicles, 26 of which are trash trucks, with the remainder comprised largely of police cruisers. It's important to note that 10 of the 26 trash trucks are 1991 vehicles, as compared to an average lifespan of 5 to 7 years for most other vehicles in our fleet. However, without a real mechanism at this time to apportion vehicle maintenance costs between trash collection and the rest of township operations, I've chosen to overlook the relative size and age of our trash trucks in allocating these costs. Thus, I'm applying a straight ratio of vehicles, clearly conservative, allocating only 10% of vehicle maintenance costs to trash collection. When taken together, these costs suggest a significant fee shortfall of $3,244,850, or $121 per household. Having now covered the essence of our 2021 budget, let's frame it properly by returning to the deficit built into the 2020 budget and our performance against this budget. The top third of this slide shows the total of revenues and expenses in each fund as advertised in the Delco Times last year. This presentation suggested a break-even budget at $97.4 million across all funds in the aggregate. In the middle third of this slide, the total of revenues and expenses for each fund are shown as they appear in the township records. Clearly, this is a different story. The bottom third of this slide shows the differences between the two top thirds, with footnotes explaining the larger differences, which are highlighted in yellow. I would characterize these differences as follows. The first note deals with the over-budgeting of general fund revenue by $1,150,000. As published in the Delco Times, budgeted tax receipts of $58,203,569 was correct. Budgeted grant revenues was only overstated by $40,000 at $3,115,000. And the remainder, which was characterized perhaps a little too broadly as departmental revenue, was overstated by $1,110,000 at $20,938,609. Interestingly, the true remaining revenue of $18,628,609 included $1.2 million that was a budgeted transfer from the sewer fund. This transfer was erroneously shown as an expense to the sewer fund and a revenue to the general fund. The net result was harmless, but it served to inflate both revenues and expenses as a function of questionable and confusing accounting practice. Note 2. The second note deals with the over-budgeting of sinking fund revenue by $2,600,000. Consistent with my explanation for note number 1, this entire 2.6 million was a transfer from the general fund, but in this case, it was not so harmless. This sum was shown as a sinking fund revenue, but not as a general fund expense, thus inflating total revenues. As I don't support inter-fund transfers being shown as revenues and expenses, they properly belong on the balance sheet. It should be clear that the sinking fund does not generate outside revenue. It's a fund designed to manage cash in the repayment of bonds, and as such is only a cost center. The 409,000 negative expense variance in the third note is my most entertaining find. The township records contain a bond principal budget line of $2,006,000 and a bond interest budget component of $1,003,041, totaling the $3,009,041 you see on the slide. What I find amusing is the prospect that budgeted principal repayment of $2,006,000 was alternatively recorded as $2,600,000 in one place and $2,006,000 in another. So to close out this slide, I will simply say that in my 6 weeks of work on this budget, I found dozens of errors, both large and small. As we are saddled with those errors, I feel it important to report this to you. The final 2 slides of the night delve a little further into the 2020 budget and its implications. Budgets, of course, are estimates that will always miss the mark for any number of reasons. Accordingly, quite a few line items differ from actual results by tens of thousands of dollars one way or the other. This slide takes a look at 4 revenue line items, which are of particular interest. The first is housing licenses, budgeted to be larger than the previous 4-year average by $353,255. The second is cable television franchise, budgeted to be larger than the previous 4-year average by $348,252. Then building permits, budgeted to be larger than the previous 4-year average by $904,103. And finally, trash collection fees, budgeted to be larger than the previous 4-year average by $2,337,023. In each case, when you look at the previous 4-year history, the amount budgeted in 2020 truly stands out. In the aggregate, these 4 items alone represent an overly optimistic revenue budget of nearly $4 million, against which our performance will be gauged. In the context of actual 2020 revenues, it's clear that these items were inflated to imagine a revenue stream that was never achievable, but served to help sell the 2020 budget. So now let's close the loop concerning performance against the 2020 budget. Per the last slide, I identified excessive revenue assumptions totaling more than 3.9 million. And as I explained 2 slides ago, the township records, which include this overstated revenue assumption, nevertheless showed a deficit in excess of 4.2 million. Thus, on this slide, I show that the existing budget presumes an $8.2 million shortfall. Now, back on the first slide, I showed that we have positive cash flow through September 30th of 16.7 million. The reason for this surplus is the front-end loading of annual revenues into the early part of the year, while expenses occur throughout the year, with certain material costs coming in the fourth quarter. As a result, I project a negative cash flow of 19.2 million for the fourth quarter, bringing us to a projected shortfall for the year of 2.5 million. As we approach year end and grapple with this projected shortfall, it's important to remember that had we performed to plan, our shortfall would have been $8.2 million. Or to put it another way, with a projected shortfall of 2.5 million, the administration has performed nearly $5.7 million better than planned. This amount is consistent with the aggregate impact of certain policies put into place concerning collection activity increased fines, and assorted cost controls, as further impacted by the furlough that followed the COVID outbreak. In closing, I'd like to remind you that this budget exercise is an ongoing work in progress. There will continue to be changes to certain numbers as we fine-tune the product. Now, clearly, I don't expect any material changes, but you can see that certain amounts have already changed since you were given the 4-page consolidation last week. Once you've had a chance to truly internalize this information, as well as all subsequent detail to follow, please feel free to reach out to the administration with any questions or comments. I have certainly tried to put forward a sound product, but in the context of last year's product, if I've made any errors in gathering or presenting data, I promise to address it promptly. With that, I'll open the floor to your questions.
Thank you, Gary. That was a great presentation. Definitely has shed some light on some issues that have been inquired about in the past with no clarification on the hows and whys. So thank you for the information. I know council will have more questions when they get the actual documentations in their hands of your actual presentation today, so that we, you know, the more we look at it, the more questions we'll have. But I know that Councilman Silva has his hand up. So go ahead, Councilman Silva.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Marin, yeah, what impact, if any, I guess, during this budgeting process, would you attribute to the ongoing pandemic?
Well, you know, in all honesty, Mayor or CAO may wish to jump in here, but from my perspective, because of the way that this township has most of its revenues sourced from property taxes rather than earned income tax or sales tax, our revenue stream really has not been severely impacted. There's been impact, of course, to parking, you know, collections and what have you, but not nearly to the extent you would see in other townships that rely more heavily on taxes that are tied to the general economy. The upside, unfortunately for us, is that because of the outbreak, we had to close the offices for a while before I arrived here, but is lore in the building about the furlough that took place. And so there was a significant cost savings there.
Well, and some, that's pretty well stated. Additionally, Councilman Silva, things like expenses related to some programmatic things over the summer, tot lot and a scaled back sort of virtual summer stage. So there were some programmatic savings as a result of the pandemic. And Gary's correct in terms of impact on revenue, although revenue is off, and also off in the area of building permits, right? Because construction was shut down for a few months. So we do have some areas where revenue has been impacted. And we did project some of that impact into 2021 as well, because our concern is that property taxes, while they're durable in the first year of the pandemic, they're possibly a lagging indicator if people have prolonged unemployment and stimulus money runs out, et cetera. It's possible that their ability to pay their property taxes in year 2 could be more impacted than their ability was this year. So those are all factors that we tried to put into the model.
Okay, I see Councilman Burke and then Councilman Bonnet. So go ahead, Burke.
Thank you, President Wentz. Question, is there any reimbursement from the state, the federal government for anything that we had occurred through the pandemic or still occurring, especially with, overtime and trash, just stuff like that? Did we get any reimbursement or the process of that?
So I'll say this, we've applied for it, but we haven't gotten any. So we're not factoring that into a budget because, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush, right? So It's something that we possibly could get. I'm not sure that we should actually base a budget around getting it. But all the department heads, since the emergency declaration in March, have been organizing the COVID-related expenses, be it overtime or PPE and all that kind of stuff. So we have all that stuff. We've applied. We've been meeting the deadlines for different government, I'd say, subsidies or reimbursements, but we haven't actually gotten any that are COVID related. So they're not part of the budget because
I was just looking at our shortfall, to better that number along with the flood that we had in 69th Street and all that. Just
no. These are good points. They're just right now they're theoreticals.
No.
So we are applying for everything that we feel that that we qualify for, right? According to the guidelines, and we're just going from there, but we're not calculating it into next year's budget at all.
But in terms of the mechanics, I think it's important to point out that there are, I think, 4 separate grants that are out there. 2 at the federal level, 1 state, and 1, one at the county level that's being debated, but seems likely to occur, that we would attempt to take advantage of. So we're very hopeful, but in keeping with what the mayor said, we're erring on the side of being conservative here.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilman Barnett, I see your hand, and I see Councilman Tunis as well. So Councilman Barnett, go ahead.
I would ask the administration to submit to council an accurate statement of operational cost savings due to the pandemic effect on how the township had to operate. One key category would be furloughs, and I would ask that you categorize those savings accordingly. I think that's a very important piece of information for us to be able to fully understand how the 2020 budget performed over the last year. So I request that information be submitted to council for our consideration, our evaluation.
Sure, absolutely. And we do plan to do that. The one thing that I would note is the furloughs. It's important to note that the furloughs were not strictly a cost saving measure. They were also part of an effort to protect the township workforce as well as the public. So in addition to furloughing some of the township workers at the township hall, we closed township hall to the public. We staggered shifts in public works so that people weren't reporting to work at the same time. So I just wanted to note that it wasn't strictly cost related. There was also social distancing / COVID safety aspects to the.
And very appropriately so. I understand that. But in effect, they have, and I'm just looking at it from the savings side, but I agree with everything you said, Vince.
Yeah.
That we had to do those things. They were the appropriate things to do. But at the same time, they did produce savings in operational costs.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
And I just wanted to look at it, and I asked the administration to submit categorically where we saved those funds and an accurate statement on how much of we've saved in each of the categories. Thank you.
Okay, and then Councilman Tunis.
Thank you, Council President Wentz. Also, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this really great presentation. I think you spoke really eloquently about the subject. As someone with the least amount of experience in this topic, I just want to pose a question just for the residents at home. So generally, just like everyone at home, I'm going through the presentation, reeling in all this information, and I'm just kind of stuck on a section you went over, in reference to the sinking revenue. And I guess my question, especially in reference to, let's just say, different accounting practices, how does that affect the following year? Or I guess a better question for the people at home is, how do practices like that affect them and how the township is being budgeted?
That's a good question. Can I share my screen again for 1 second, folks?
Sure, go ahead.
It'll be more sensible for me to talk about this if you can look at what I'm going to be talking about. So the sinking fund right here. Oops. The sinking fund had $2.6 million right here listed as a proposed expenditure, and $2.6 million down here listed as proposed revenue. So in this ad, the totals of 97.4 million revenue and expenditures included 2.6 million on both sides. So what's important for everybody to understand is that there is no such thing as sinking fund revenue. The only time in government speak when a sinking fund can generate revenue is by virtue of having transferred money from the general fund into the sinking fund, in which case you show the 2.6 million up here as an expense of funding the sinking fund. It's an artifice, it just balances out. But in this case, this 2.6 million was really going to pay bonds. It's really going out the door. This 2.6 million of revenue never really existed. So, I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, call this an innocent mistake. It was $2.6 million worth of revenue that was never going to occur. Now, how it affects the masses, I, as a resident, don't like the fact that the budget has that kind of a flaw in it. I'm an accountant, and so, I'm going to obsess over things like this. But the real impact will be felt, if at all, at the end of this year, if money runs short. And there are several things that are being done to forestall that. And of course, as we have had recent experience with, if we have to kick the can down the road, there's a TRAN to discuss to get through to next year's revenues. But at this moment in time, as David Hammond will certainly be telling you next week, we do have significant sums of money in the bank. And so I'm not immediately worried about us running out of money. But know that the 2.6 million just didn't belong as a revenue component. I hope that explained more than not.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Councilman Barnett, before we go back to you, I have to check to see if there are any other council members that have a question. Any other council members have a question pertaining to this? Okay, seeing none, go ahead, Councilman Barnett.
Thank you. Gary, back to your point on the sinking fund. Isn't it effectively taking monies available and showing them coming out of cash reserves and that are on hand, and using those cash reserves to be part of an entry to balance a budget in a future year? Isn't it effectively that?
I would say it a little differently. When you cut through all of the transfers from one fund to another, from one bank account to another, it's 2.6 million of real expense that's being paid for out of general fund revenues. That's the bottom line. When you cut out all of the accounting artifices and the mechanisms, we take 2.6 million of the money that we collect from the taxpayers and we pay down the bonds. And the fact that that article that was published confused the concept by showing an interfund transfer as a legitimate revenue item is just plain incorrect.
Well, we only have two sides, two columns. We have an expense column and we have a revenue column.
Right.
And you have to show money's taken out of a cash reserve as an expense on the expense column. And if you're going to use that to fund a future budget, you have to put it in a revenue column. There's the only two places you can put them. So I think you're exaggerating the effect of this. Frankly, it was intentionally placed and taken from cash reserves and put on the revenue side so we could balance the budget. That was discussed in great detail at the time. So it's nothing nefarious that was done.
No, I'm not suggesting nefarious. I find the result to be somewhat clumsy, certainly error prone. I mean, the slide that shows that I've broken into thirds that show the way it is recorded in that ad and the way it is recorded in our books and records here, which, and I know I have no authority to make this statement, but feel free to send in a team of CPAs to take me apart. I'm pulling that information right out of the database. The reality is there was a $4.2 million deficit in that budget, and 2.6 million of it was an artificial revenue item that didn't belong there. The 2.6 million was an expense, but that expense was covered by the 55 million in tax revenue that we brought in, not by some additional $2.6 million revenue number.
No, it was already cash on hand.
That's irrelevant to the current period revenues and expenses. If we had cash on hand, but since we took out a trend at the beginning of the year, you could argue that we didn't.
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about when we made the 2020 budget, which was in calendar year 2019, at the end of calendar year 2019. And in order to balance the budget, we openly discussed that we were taking cash reserves and putting them into the budget to balance the budget. That was not anything that was done other than in an open forum and publicly discussed.
Mr. Burnett, I'm certainly not suggesting, I'm sorry, Vince, just one more thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead.
Obviously, I was not a part of these discussions, and I'm not suggesting anything nefarious, and I apologize if I've been rude in the way that I'm characterizing what I'm looking at here. I'm a little bit ramped up. This has been quite a process. But I want to be clear about the 2.6. As a cash management exercise, the money may have existed in a bank account, but that's not accounting. Accounting is looking at the revenues and expenses in a specific period. And during the year 2020, whether you're budgeting for it or whether you're living through it, there is no $2.6 million revenue item that is related to a sinking fund.
I also would like to add in 2009 for 2019's budget, funds were taken from our fund balance, which is our was explained to us as our savings account to balance the budget for 2019, even though from research that myself and Councilwoman, or at the time Councilwoman Keffer had done, as well as other council members, that it was a very bad idea to decrease the fund balance to 5 million when in average our monthly payments, expenses were closer to 6,000 or 7,000 a month, that to have a fund balance drop below because from our research, it said that you should have at least 2 months worth of savings worth of expenses tucked away for a catastrophic event, right? So COVID-19 could be considered one of those catastrophic events that no one thought was ever going to happen, right? So if the average was, I think I came up, with the pension funding and everything that we had to do, that it was around, granted my numbers might be off, around 6 to 7 million on average per month of expenses. And therefore we should have at least 14 million tucked away in the fund balance to be able to pay those expenses. And we did highly disagree with the taking of funds from the fund balance to balance the budget for 2019. I believe it was 2019 or it was 2018. So I just want to point out that that was part of our discussion in the discussion of those budgets in those previous years. And we were told, no, 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 it's fine. It's okay that it's only 5 million in the fund balance. So,
But remember that there is a cost to the taxpayer to do just what you're saying, to carry a heavy tax reserve, a cash reserve. And it's not fair to the taxpayer to have to fund that. And it was made, a decision was made not to increase the cash reserves, the fund balance, such that we would have to increase taxes substantially to do that.
but you didn't have to take from the, but to take money from the fund balance, knowing that you were already pretty low to begin with, was kind of a problem. But that was just wanted to throw that in.
But my point, Laura, is that we would have had to raise taxes substantially if we did it otherwise. And it was deemed not fair to the taxpayer to raise their taxes to the extent that would be required to carry a substantial cash reserve or fund balance.
But if you also look back at the previous slides, he already established that there were past years that were overinflated on what the funding was. So if the math was right in 2018 and 2019, then it would have been more correct in 2020 versus some of the things he's already discovered.
Well, I don't have that information available to me, so I can't react to it.
It was on the presentation. So sorry, Mayor Keffer and CAO.
I just like to point, I'll just point out real quickly that I was on council at the time that now President Council Wentz is talking about. We voted against it. We knew there was something wrong with the budget, but it's your budget and you passed it. That's fine. We're moving on. It's a new administration. And we're trying to reconcile things in a proper and a clear way. And not trying to coast to coast every year, just winging it like was done in the past.
Thank you. Councilman Wagner, I see you, but, Councilman Silva did speak before. Yes, so Councilman Wagner, go ahead, and then Councilman Silva.
Thank you. Briefly, I'm not going to repeat all the things that Don Bonnet just said, except to underline that the point in the past, which was clearly and publicly discussed, unfortunately, in the absence of our new finance director, that we didn't want to raise people's taxes. You want to do something differently now, that's fine. But obviously, the entire point of this obscene discussion so far has been just to bash the previous administration, which frankly has been the answer of the Keffer administration to every single thing it's done up until now. Can we just actually do what the mayor just said instead of pretending that we're doing it and move on?
CAO?
Sure. I'll try to be brief and hope that we can, in fact, move on. But there were a couple things that were just said that are demonstrably false. The budget that has been introduced is balanced without a proposed tax increase. It's not a binary choice between raising taxes and draining the fund balance. You can do other things to generate revenue, like update your food inspection schedule and actually charge for commercial fire inspections. You can cut costs around the township. So it is not a binary choice. And that's simply a fact. And I mean, we can do all of this that we want to do and stuff, but those are just clear empirical statements of fact that I think are important. So that's all.
Councilman Silva is actually next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually just want to agree with my colleague, Councilman Wagner, that yes, perhaps we could move on and discuss this budget and not those of years previous.
I agree.
Okay, so, all right. Any other questions on what was presented? So Seeing none. So in the past, and I know you've only been, Gary, working on it for 6 weeks, and I appreciate everything that you've been doing. It's a great presentation. I was just curious when we would get more of a breakdown of what the different revenues are and expenses are more specifically. Then I feel like it's still general. So I was just curious when we would be able to get something with more detail.
Good question. Allison will be distributing by email any moment and posting on the website much of the detail that underlies the schedules that I've just shown you.
Okay.
In particular, you're going to receive budget worksheets for the general fund, the sewer fund, the highway fund, and the sinking fund, which will show legitimate third-party revenues and expenses of each fund with no inter-fund transfers and nothing to consider in terms of anything other than a transparent view through what the net effect to the township is.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, any other questions or concerns on this presentation? All right, seeing none. Mayor Keffer, would you like to introduce our next presenter? There you are.
So yeah, so Melissa Hughes from PFM, which is a firm that the township has worked with several times in the recent past on our bond issues, is going to give a presentation because we do have to put together a capital improvement budget and we have to fund it. And this process was begun about this time last year and then wasn't finished. So we're just working extra hard to put this together so that we have the money to buy new trash trucks and fire trucks and many other things. The capital, to me, the capital improvement budget is not that it's the fund budget, but we did ask all the department heads to sort of give us their wish list. What would they like in the next 5 years? What do they need to grow and improve their departments? And so we worked with them within, a certain, we think a reasonable amount of money over the next 5 years to get things done. So as you can see, like our general fund budget is very much payroll, health insurance, pension, and it's like keeping the lights on and keeping things going. And the people that work for us that are doing the day-to-day things, trash collection, fixing the sewers, working on the parks, they're really they're not in this meeting. Some of them might be listening to this meeting for the humor that it might present, but these are people that go into the township, into our various departments every day, and they just go to work. So that's the general fund in my mind, and the capital improvement fund is sort of it's the fun money. Sort of, this is the thing that pushes us forward. So with that said, if Melissa Hughes is ready from PFM, that would be great.
Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before I did it. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in, so hopefully my text isn't too small. So as the mayor said, my name is Melissa Hughes, and I'm here from PFM Financial Advisors. So my job is I'm the township's, or a member of the township's, financial advisory team. So my job is when the township is considering a new debt issuance or refunding a debt issuance, I help you look at the numbers and and work as part of the financing team to structure the financing in a way that complies with the state and federal laws and pays attention to ultimately what are you going to use the money on, and how can we fit just like your your general fund budget is, I like to think of it as like a series of Lego blocks that stack together. So your debt is a series of Lego blocks that stack together. And we'll talk about what that means here for a couple minutes. So tonight I'm going to talk about a financing plan that would total approximately 30 million, and that amount was provided and is in the backup schedules at the end of the presentation by the administration. That $30 million would not be spent all at one time, but it would be spent over the next 5 years. And that timeline is really important because you don't need to borrow money today for money that you're going to spend 5 years from now. And not only do you not need it, you actually can't do it. The IRS says, look at what you need for the next 3 years and assess the amount that you need for the next 3 years, and then that's what you can consider borrowing. So because of this, and because there are certain financing benefits to issuing in increments of $10 million or less, we're going to illustrate here a 3-step financing plan over the next 3 years to encompass 5 years of funding. A really important factor to keep in mind as you're looking at all of these is these are pro formas and they're estimates. What you ultimately do, you'll make decisions at each step that will shape what the final financing looks like. I don't know what it will look like at the end of the day, but I can guarantee it will not look exactly as I'm going to show tonight. There will be variances, and that's to be expected as you make decisions on what capital projects will be included and will not be included, the timing of those, and as we get more clarity on what the useful life of the projects will be. When we do any financing, we want to make sure that there's enough debt being paid off that the assets and the liabilities match. So think about it when you build a house. If you build a new house, that house is going to be there for 30 years. So you might take a 30-year mortgage. But for your car, when you buy a car, that car is not going to last for 30 years. So you don't finance that over 30 years. So kind of those same principles that you would apply in your personal life, those apply to when we do local government debt like the township could consider. In addition to the new money, we'll look over the next few months here at a potential refinancing opportunity associated with your 2016 and 2017 bond issues. That's not going to be the primary focus of my presentation tonight, but just so everybody is aware, that's something that you should expect to hear more about in the next few months. Evaluating those opportunities, and this refinancing opportunity could potentially be taken advantage of on a taxable basis based on the current tax laws. And we're going to continue to monitor it because when you issue bonds on a taxable basis, there are different pros and cons we need to consider. And we'll have a separate conversation to get more in detail on that. But the savings is fairly robust. And if everyone feels comfortable about proceeding, then in early 2021, we could potentially go out and do that refinancing and take advantage of an opportunity to reduce interest rates. So even as we were talking about potentially adding borrowing for new capital projects, we're not paying attention to what's going on in your existing debt profile and trying to optimize any opportunities there. Ultimately, assuming council's ready to proceed, we could consider what's called a maximum parameters ordinance, which is the mechanism the township has utilized in the past, which sets out maximum principal amounts, maximum interest rates, and maximum maturity dates. And we have to set out maximum in each and every year. So if the financing we're going to do in 2020 is $10 million, the maximum parameter schedule will be $12 million. Because not only does it have to be match in aggregate, it has to match in each and every year. So ultimately, our goal is to make sure that those Lego blocks at the end of the day stack up and produce the lowest cost for the township. And this is a tool that we utilize to do that. Okay. And there's some stuff about bank qualified bonds on here. I'm going to hold that for a little bit later in my presentation. So there's lots of, bad news that we hear every time we turn on the news and listen to, what's going on in the world. But with bad news comes good news in the municipal interest rate environment. And you can see that here on the bottom of the page. This is not an interest rate quote. It is an index, just like you might say, oh, the S&P 500 goes up or down, or treasury bonds go up or down. This is an index that tracks if you had a perfect credit rating, what the 10-year rate would be over time. And you can see, over time, rates have been down. They spiked up there at the beginning of COVID when the market kind of froze, and they have been very low kind of since June. They dipped down there a little bit in August, and then we've just been in this nice low place. So as the township may be considering refinancing opportunities, that's definitely a benefit. This is the township's existing debt. There are currently 3 series of bonds. And you can see that the final payment on the series of 2009 note will be made in 2020. Focus on column 5 here. I've talked earlier about the stacking effect. So in aggregate, what's going to happen is this year you're going to pay $2,652,381. And then if you did nothing, your debt service would drop to the $2,402,000, which I think is the number that I saw on Vince's screen earlier. Assuming the township kept that $2,652,000 in, you have what's called debt drop-offs. And we're going to show you scenarios that utilize what's called the wraparound structure, where you fill in new principal as the old principal drops off. Generally the benefit of utilizing that structure is that there's a lower upfront impact for taxpayers. This is a timeline. It has a lot of information on it. So I'll draw your attention to some important dates. And we always show kind of the fastest things can happen. And if we need to slow down for any reason, we'll do that. Good decisions aren't made in haste. I'm a firm believer in that. So we're here on October 24th, having an initial financing discussion. You could tonight or at your meeting on the 21st authorize the financing team to proceed. At your meetings in November, you could consider that maximum parameters ordinance that I referenced earlier. And that would allow us to lock in interest rates on a financing, kind of early mid-December, which would allow the township to receive money in its accounts December 31st. So as I said, this is the fastest timeline we could move on. And if we decide we're not ready to move that fast, that's okay. But we always like to put it out there in this format because it gives you a sense of how long do things take. Because it certainly takes more time than if you wanted to go get your own home mortgage. You'd call up your mortgage broker and they'd run a credit check and you could be done in 30 days. Just takes more time here. Okay. So I'm going to show a slide that focuses on the 2020 financing, and then we'll look at it in the broad context of how it would look over 3 financings. And we always want to, when we're considering a large capital plan, like the township's potential 5-year capital plan, we always want to think about it both ways. What's the impact for this year? And what's the impact, big picture? Where are we going? Sounds like Gary is going to introduce more 5-year forecasting or long-term forecasting, and that's really great. This kind of dovetails together with that. So you can see I've highlighted here the existing debt service, which is the amount you're going to pay in 2020. Column 5 is just this particular debt service, and you can see how that layers in there. I'm going to go a little bit more into how that works on the next slide. And then column 7 just measures the difference between what you had in your 2020 budget. So you can see it would be an increase of about $58,000. And then if you did no other financings, you would have debt drop-offs. Ultimately, you may pursue a second and third financing. So that's why we always want to look at the big picture. So I'm going to go pause a little bit and see if there's questions here before I go through how to read the kind of 3-year financing plan and some of the key considerations here and things that are still kind of in the process of being determined.
Okay, are there any questions from council on what you've seen so far? Just trying to see everyone's screens.
I'm lost.
So of what she's gone over so far, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Bob.
I know it looked like our existing debt from the previous years was done over 16 years. And that was a seemingly good match at the time. It looks like you're requesting 20 years. Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, you always want to match up the useful life of the assets you're going to finance and the financing term. So what we've done, and that's actually a really good question and good segue into the next kind of part. And I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'll answer your question kind of as I go. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Because that's a good question and it's an important point that I really want to emphasize. And I'll note this header up at the top. So we looked at the capital plan and in round numbers looked at it and said, we think about $8 million of the plan has a useful life of 5 years. So that's a fairly short useful life. So we are having the townships, a pretty good portion of that $30 million paid off over a very short period of time. Ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to work with bond counsel to assign, and the correct folks from engineering, you know, your engineer or architect as the right professional might be, to assign final useful lives, and then we'll match those up. Because you can't finance longer than something is good for, just like you can't finance your car for 20 years, right? Finance it for 5 or 7. And similarly, you wouldn't finance a house generally over 5. So there's enough of kind of, I'll call it the house type things, where you have 20 or even 30-year financing terms where they'll be good for that amount of time, that we've spread that data over 20 years. So to answer your question about that 20-year time frame, but if you notice here in column 10, you know, and I guess really 7, 8, 9, you can see those bigger principal payments up front. That's to accommodate the potential need to have up to $8 million of it paid off over 5 years. And that's something we'll refine. So ultimately, if bond counsel comes back and says, you know, ultimately $6 million of this needs to be paid off over 5 million and the other 2 million can be paid off over 10 million, well, then we'll adjust the financing schedules accordingly. Did that answer your question, Mr. Gwynn?
Yes, it did. I did have another silly question, but I'll ask it nonetheless. Your presentation on the front sheet had October 19.
That is simply a typo. I'm sorry.
Okay. I didn't know if it was just something that you had there deliberately for some reason, what it was. Thank you.
I think 4 and 9 just look similar. I'm sorry. So this is how to read this page. And that's a really, really important point that Mr. Gwynn hit on. You know, ultimately we'll work together, and how the blue, green, and purple columns, you know, ultimately how we shift funds between those will be based on how the township and the folks in administration, you all tell us that those monies will be used. So right now we have a big picture look, and the township administration and you folks will have to come back and say, okay, for the first 10 million, here's the projects on that list, and we'll match those useful lives up. And that's still a process that's ongoing. Okay. Ultimately, we always try to be a little bit conservative in our interest rate assumptions when we're this early on in the process. So if you're pricing all of these transactions right now, all of these numbers would look a little bit better. But obviously, there's a lot of interest rate risk until we get to 2021 and 2022. And ultimately, if we have conversations in 2022 and the folks on council come back and say, I think we're good with the $20 million we have for right now, come back and talk to us in 2023, we'll adjust accordingly. Want to do that matching of what you need and what you borrow, ultimately. So you might say, well, why are we splitting it up into 3 transactions? Matching up what you need and what you borrow is number 1. And number 2, because by doing a transaction of $10 million or less, the IRS gives you slightly better interest rates and a more flexible, what's called call feature. So call feature is when the township has an opportunity to refinance their debt. And refinancings for municipal debt are at your pleasure and your pleasure only. The bank can't come back to you and say, hey, you got to refinance. No, if you like what you have, you get to keep it. But after 5 years, if you want to refinance, you can. The township used that bank qualified strategy when it did its transactions in 2016 and 2017. And that strategy is what is positioning us to be able to consider that refinancing I talked about earlier. If we had done them together as one issue, the math just would not work. We would not be having a conversation at all about that potential opportunity. So we're proposing here that the township would utilize the same strategy because it gives a lot more flexibility. It does good asset liability matching. And it allows you to make decisions over time instead of needing to decide how you're going to spend $30 million all today. The final pages are simply the capital improvement plan that was provided by the township. And so that's what we utilized to produce all those schedules. And there's lots of backups that we made, but does anybody have any additional questions that I can answer?
Council members, do you have any questions? I see Councilman Barnett. So Councilman Barnett, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam
And
President.
Councilman, go ahead, Councilman Barnett.
Melissa, I don't know if it was said, I guess it was at the beginning, I may not have heard it, that you're with PFM Financial Advisors.
Yes.
And I just want to say I have a high regard for your organization. And I think that's why we have been working with your organization for several years now. And I think you are, you very succinctly and accurately and very nicely present information that in a way that we can easily understand it. Having said that, I just want to comment about some of the effects of this proposed program. Number one, it really comes down to the council looking at the line item capital budget and agreeing, disagreeing, whatever, having a dialogue about whether we will approve all that is being proposed in the form of capital investments going forward. That's not a topic for discussion this evening, I realize that. But one thing that is the realization, and although that these numbers, as you said, and I understand, will change to some degree as refinements are made to the capital expenses proposed. But one thing for sure is that right now, as of the end of this calendar year, Upper Darby has a little more than a $22 million debt obligation. And when we add 3 more years of just about $30 million of new money, that new money translates into about $40 million plus of debt obligation to the township. So collectively, we're going to go from 22 million in debt obligation all the way up to 62 million if this program is fulfilled. And the council agrees with it. That's a pretty significant increase at the expense of the taxpayer. And I'm not going to take a position right now that it's not warranted, because we do have to replace our equipment that allows us to operate this township. There's no doubt about it that we have some aging equipment, and it's just they all have a life expectancy and a life cycle. So we have to move on, and we have to make the investments to do that. But I think it's important that everyone on council and in our community, our taxpayers, understand that we are adding another, if this is fulfilled the way it is presented, another $40 million in tax obligation over and above the $22 million that we have in round numbers right now. The other point to be made is that our annual debt service payments, although in the end of this year and the end of next year are projected to remain pretty stable, pretty constant, they do, under the current financing, drop down to less than half. In other words, they go from 2.4 million down to almost 1.1 million. And when you look at that 1.1 million, after 3 more years of added funding, they will go up to 2.7 million. And in subsequent years, up to 3.3, 3.6, et cetera, and then drop down again. So I just want to make those points that people have to understand that this is a big leap for Upper Darby. And, you know, I've reserved my opinions as to whether or not it's justified, because in all fairness to the administration, we do have to consider the capital line item budget that's being presented, and we will.
And just to speak to a couple of your points, you know, it's not, ultimately you're going to have that dialogue about what belongs in the capital budget and what belongs in the bond issue. Ultimately, you may come back and say, yes, we're going to do all $30 million of this, but we're going to pay, I'm pulling a number literally out of the air here, we're going to pay $3 million of it on an ongoing basis over the next 5 years. And you'll have those, that, you know, that's the appropriate dialogue to have, and you'll have that dialogue, and, you know, each and every year, you know, as we go through a potential financing plan, you know, if council so chooses to go through any financing plan, you know, we'll have that dialogue. You know, how much is this year's financing? What belongs in it? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilman Silva?
Thanks, Council President. And I can't help but notice, but my colleague kept saying over and above our previous existing debt, but it's my understanding that a part of the function of some of the borrowing is to capitalize on the lower interest rates to pay off the previous debt now, and to do so at a savings. But that's neither here nor there. The question I have actually about the lump of, as we're doing the 30 million in under $10 million amounts to capitalize on the call feature and the other benefits you spoke of. Is there any way to sort of lock in the interest rate for all of those 3 installments if we chose 3 installments, or would we be like, I guess next year, hoping that the interest rate doesn't grossly increase, or would there be any way to capitalize on this interest rate for the entire loan?
Yes, but it comes with significant negative downsides. So the tool that, and Tim, you know, if you think, so Tim is from PNC, he's the underwriter, he's on the phone also. If you think of anything else that I'm not thinking of, feel free to jump in here. But the tool that comes to mind is called an interest rate swap. And those come with significant negative downsides. And I don't think it's something the township would probably want to pursue.
Yeah, just to tack on to that, for most new money issuances, you wouldn't want to use some of these, let's call them exotic products, interest rate swaps, or what we call a forward interest rate lock, where you lock the rates now at a certain premium. A lot of those things require you to do those issues in the future. And if council decides, as Melissa said previously, hey, we don't necessarily need 30 million, maybe we only need 20 or 15, those products still require you to issue that debt. So
yeah, so it's just not the right tool for the situation. Like, the tool that's out there isn't a good fit for this set of facts and circumstances. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just see if there are any other council members. Any questions?
Actually,
I don't see another council person. Okay, I do have a question myself. I had talked to David Nasrati. Okay.
Nassiter.
Thank you. Could you just give us a little more information on the 2016, 2017, debt realm and what you guys are proposing to do with it?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Council President Wentz, as well as Madam Mayor and all of Council for having us here tonight. I want to thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dave Nassiter. I am the Vice Chair at the Obermeyer Law Firm. And with me tonight, I have Pauline Markey, one of my tax partners, and Pat Scott, who does a lot of the public finance deals, as well as Melissa obviously mentioned earlier. Tim Kerr and Dave Payne are here from PNC, who are the underwriters should you go forward with these financings. And I know, in addition to telling Melissa what a great job she did as usual, so thank you, Melissa, it was really a pleasure to be here talking to you folks tonight about these proposed debt restructurings and capital projects. This is the stuff that really makes it worthwhile from my perspective when you work with municipalities and authorities and townships, counties, just to see how we're growing and making things work and fitting within a budget that doesn't necessarily mean raising taxes or causing unnecessary debt to a township. And so as Madam Council President mentioned, you have a 16 and 17 debt that's already in existence. At the same time, we're looking at these capital projects. So the way in which to best handle this is, right now we can get the cheapest money out there. It's called bank qualified debt, which Melissa very ably explained for this year. And we're allowed $10 million in a year to take advantage of that. So that is right now available to us. And come January 1st, we have 10 million next year. But if we don't take advantage of the 10 million this year, it's gone. The opportunity is gone. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation now, because rates are historically low, and this is a great opportunity to get this new money for potentially part of the capital project. At the same time, as Madam President mentioned, you have outstanding debt from 16 and 17 that, thanks to changes in the market, it looks like you could have some significant savings of up to actually approximately $1 million if we were able to sell bonds today to refund and replace the 16 and 17 debt. So you could actually come out ahead of the game, both in 16 and 17, with $1 million of savings, and then of course get the cheapest money available under what's called bank qualified debt for the new funds to do part of your capital program. And what we had hoped is, as Melissa very ably mentioned, is that you would authorize us to move forward on that, and then come back to you in a few weeks with a parameters resolution that would ultimately allow us, if the market conditions remain the way we hope they are or get even better within certain parameters, to then actually execute and close on both of those types of financings. One being the bank qualified new money, and the other one being the refunding or refinancing of the old money and saving of hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And so we do have a resolution this evening on the 2016 and 2017 side of the equation that we will be considering passing. I think we just didn't, I didn't fully understand the bank qualified resolution that you needed us to also consider. So if you can send us some documentation on that so that we can, because you had talked in our training about a motion, and I had talked to the mayor and CAO and our solicitors about it, that through a resolution, it's a better tracking mechanism for the township. If these types of decisions are made through resolution, instead of just a motion, right? It gives us a more solid documentation of what we're doing, and a better way for the township to be able to track it. So we did create a resolution that we will be talking about later on in the meeting. And then we would probably need another resolution for the bank qualified debt that you're talking about.
We can certainly do that and send it to your next meeting, or you could simply amend tonight's resolution to simply include also pursuing, because we're going to come back to you regardless, but also allowing us to pursue options for the bank qualified debt as well. Either way is fine. We'll get you the same result.
Okay.
Yep. Ultimately, what you're saying to us when you pass that resolution from a practical perspective, it says, please go and start the credit rating process. Because the credit rating is the only fee that the township will incur. You know, if for some reason we got to the second meeting in November and you didn't want to proceed with any financings, no refinancing, no new money. So that's why we want to have, you know, some thumbs up in terms of that.
Okay.
And there are ways to mitigate that cost. You know, if for some reason the market does move away and everything, you know, they don't expect to be paid for 6 months. So we got a long timeline to kind of resolve things if that were to come to pass, and then you can negotiate down a lower fee. So.
Okay. Could Solicitor Kilkenny weigh in on this? Since it's kind of something that I asked them to do. So I was just wondering if we can.
Well, we have another meeting. The resolution in front of you is just saying to move ahead, that they'll be pursuing due diligence. We'll get another resolution in line. There's no need to amend this unless if I'm mistaken or whatever at this point. Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to cover all the bases. Thank you.
If they move ahead, there'll be lots of documentation or 40-page ordinances. You'll see them. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
If you have trouble sleeping at night, that will help.
Yeah,
that will help.
Good time. Yeah.
Plenty of reading. Okay.
That's right.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that deeper explanation on the debt and the interest rates and so forth. Does any other council members or anyone have any other questions? Councilman Gwynn, I see. And that is all I see. So Councilman Gwynn?
Just a very simple question. Can you inform the public as to what our debt rating is currently?
Good question. I believe you're
A+.
An A+, yes. I have it right here. Your last bond issue. I was like, I want to check and make sure it is an A+. And so an A+ credit rating means it's an above average credit rating on the scale from Standard & Poor's.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Just want to make sure we're all good. Looks like we're all good, right? Okay. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. Oh, Councilman Wagner waving. I changed the page and found you. Okay, Councilman Wagner. Go ahead.
I'm sorry that I managed to be missed there. I just have a question. This may not be directed to either Melissa Hughes or David Nassiter. And like Don Bonnet said, I have great respect for your organizations too. So this has nothing to do with any of that. This is just a question. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm concerned about the home rule charter in all of this. The charter at section 905 tells us that the capital program is supposed to be submitted to council no later than 30 days prior to the time that the budget, the annual budget, is submitted to council. Was that done here?
not sure if you're asking me, Mr. Wagner.
No, sir,
I'm
I'm
finance
really-
counsel, so
I know, I know.
really
I'll
can't
answer, I'll
I
answer
can't answer
that.
that question. I apologize. I can't answer that. So.
No, no,
I'll answer that.
No.
Councilman Wagner,
Yeah.
you're in full knowledge that any capital budget was not submitted last year. And that was okay with you. And if you want to go down the rabbit hole of what is done according to the Home Rule Charter and what has not been done we'll just bring it back to when you started on council in 2005. We can do that if you want. I don't think that's very productive. We are under a lot of pressure this year with the transition, right, from the one party Republican rule to now very mixed council, Democratic mayor, COVID, and we are working very hard with a lot of different entities. Some are new, some are entities like PFM that have worked with the previous administration. We are trying to do our best. If you're really going to call us out on any home rule charter stuff, that's great. And next week at our next council meeting, we can go forward with that. Okay. So what exactly are you questioning here?
Well, my question was clear and your answer was also clear. Your answer was no, it wasn't done because you regard it as just home rule charter stuff. Well, the people who passed the home rule charter might regard the charter as a little more important than that, but I see that your attitude apparently is not to move on, but instead to continue looking at the past and trying to blame the past and so on. Can we please move on from that? My question was a simple one. Was it done in accordance with the home rule charter? Evidently, your answer, though pretty clandestine, nevertheless, I think clearly meant no.
Why are you holding me and my administration to a standard than you're holding the previous administration when you were the vice president of council? That's all I'm saying. We are just trying to pick up the pieces of what you dropped at our feet, and that's fine. You can question it as we can go back and forth.
Madam Mayor, what was presented at your feet was, according to the presentation just made, an A+ credit rating. So please stop the nonsense and stop the disingenuous blaming of the past instead of getting on with things as you
Slightly above average credit rating predicated on a phony budget. The process began last year and was abandoned after the election. I mean, if you really want to get into it, which of course you don't.
Give me a break.
Okay. Stop. Yes. So, we need to hold off on the back and forth. There are a lot of things that have fallen into play into why we are where we are today. CAO Rangione was pointing out some of those factors of why we are here today, and the fact that, we are trying to put some pieces back together again. So at this point in time, as far as this presentation for the capital budget, specifically to the people who are giving us this wonderful presentation in a way in which we can all understand and that our residents can understand what it is we're trying to do and all the things we're trying to accomplish to improve quality of life for everyone in the township, regardless of where they live. So with that being said, are there any questions for our presenters about what they have presented to us? CAO Rangione.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say a quick thank you to the finance team that we've assembled here. I know you happened to fall on a night with a budget presentation, and we appreciate your patience waiting through that. We are very fortunate to have PFM stay on with the township. They've always done great work for us. And David Nassiter and Pat Scott from the Obermayer law firm are fantastic. And I also wanted to mention Tim Kerr from PNC Capital Markets and David Payne. PNC is the most reputable and experienced underwriters in the market. So we're thrilled to have them, and we appreciate their patience and in this presentation. The one technical note is, even if council does choose to approve the entire 30 million, the finance team here assembled has made sure that the annual cost to the taxpayer would remain less than 4% of the total township budget. So they've worked very hard to make sure that it is very affordable on an annual basis over time. And that just sort of speaks to their experience and quality in this area. So I just want to say thank you quickly.
And thank you actually for that clarification. Also, CA Rangioni, just to verify that 4 million that you referenced just now, that's what was already in the budget. So it's basically about keeping it equal to what's currently in the budget and making sure it never goes beyond that, right? Is the
Correct.
General plan.
Yeah.
So it's not going to cause the raising of taxes in the future in the process of borrowing 30 million to do capital projects to improve our township. We won't have to raise taxes in order to fund that.
That's certainly the way it's designed, given the current market conditions, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, best case scenario, we won't have to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Councilman Silva, I did see your hand up. I wasn't sure if that was from a previous thing. Just wanted to check on you.
No, I'm sorry. I just was, no, I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay, and then Councilman Bonnet, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. I disagree with your statement that this is a statement that just because we're raising $30 million in additional debt, which is really $40 million in debt service, when you add the interest to it, that we will have to pay, that's a cost. And it may be offset with other reductions in expenditures elsewhere, but it is definitely a cost that the taxpayer will pay for.
Oh, absolutely. It's a cost that's projected to amount to less than 4% of the total budget.
Right.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
absolutely right. Yeah,
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all to our presenters. You guys did an awesome job. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us on this and sharing it with our residents as well. And because it's on YouTube, they can re-listen to it as many times as they want in the future. So, and watch it. So thank you very much for all of your assistance this evening.
Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so council, let's get back to our agenda. And at this point in time, if Solicitor Kilkenny can give us a reading of Resolution 46-20.
I'll be happy to. Let me just pull up my email.
Yep.
Okay. 4620. Okay, got it open. Okay. A resolution to authorize proceeding with pursuing bond financing for capital projects and to refund and finance the 2016 and 2017 outstanding bonds, repealing all inconsistent resolutions or parts thereof, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date. Whereas a local governmental unit may only borrow money on bonds or notes, including tax anticipation notes, pursuant to a procedure provided in the Local Governmental Unit Debt Act. Whereas Upper Darby Township is considering a financing under the Local Government Unit Debt Act that may consist of refunding of all or a portion of the township's outstanding bonds and finance the acquisition of certain assets to benefit the township. Whereas that Upper Darby Township Council desires the township administration, along with appropriate finance and legal professionals, proceed with pursuing bond financing pending the approval of the council and adoption of appropriate ordinance at a future meeting. Whereas council authorizes and directs township administration to do such things as may be necessary and appropriate to implement the intent and purposes of this resolution. Now therefore be it resolved that Upper Darby Township Council hereby authorizes the engagement of the following finance and legal professionals to consider the financing project. Obermeyer, Reedman, Maxwell, and Hippel, LLP, as finance and bond counsel, PNC Capital Markets, LLC, as underwriter, and PFM Financial Advisors, LLC, as the township's financial advisor. There's a repealer clause, a severability clause, and an effective date. And that concludes my reading of the resolution.
Great, thank you. Any council members have any questions or concerns on this resolution? Kind of saw Bob starting to raise his hand, but wasn't sure if that was a full raise. And you're muted, but okay, he's saying no.
I'd like to move the motion.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. Do you have so you have the move, thank you. And anyone want to second the motion?
I'd like to second the motion.
Blackwell.
So is a tie between Silva and Blackwell. So,
Oh, I think it's Danielle.
okay, so Blackwell it is. Thank you. All right, thank you for helping me get back on my rhythm.
I think it was Michelle.
Are there any questions or concerns on this? Oh, hold on, sorry, having computer issues. Questions or concerns on this resolution? Okay, seeing none. Okay, sorry. Great. So if you, Bob, go ahead.
I just have one comment. I presume that we can make our minds up relative to the products that we do in fact purchase. That's a separate idea from what the idea of moving this motion forward.
Yeah, the resolution, as I read it, just basically says, here is the team to start exploring your options.
Yeah, we can define that later.
Yeah, you can define it. You can define what the options are, define whether to do it, how to do it, or whether not to do it. So, yeah.
Right, we're basically giving them permission to start the research process.
To move ahead, yeah.
Right. Okay. Anyone else have any questions or concerns? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of passing resolution 46-20 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say your name. Okay, so Barnett and Wagner, are you guys supportive of it?
Yeah, we voted yes.
Sorry, you guys were muted. I didn't know if you, I just wanted to confirm. That's all.
I'm sorry I was muted.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure you guys were cool. So.
We're always
great.
cool.
Well, of course, I'm just saying, clarification on this particular one. And Councilwoman Lisa Feralia just hopped back on. Councilwoman Feralia?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, do you support resolution 46-20?
That resolution, Laura, so I don't, let me.
It's on allowing the finance team to move forward in investigating interest rates for our debt for 2017 and 2016, 2017.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Awesome. Great. So, sorry, I have to find my agenda again. Great. So moving forward, we have the Public Safety Committee co-chairs council, or actually, no, I'm next. Haha. President of Council is next. That's me. Okay, I just want to thank the Upper Darby professional firefighters for coming out last Saturday to the 69th Street Recreational Center for the food distribution. They also shared information on Fire Prevention Month, as well as gave out some snacks to those waiting in line for the food distribution. So thank you to the firefighters for their assistance in the distribution, and they did help to walk boxes to people's cars who needed them. So that was really awesome. And also wanted to inform our residents that we did have an informational executive session on Monday, most of which you just saw tonight. It was for the capital budget, improvement budget, bonds and so forth. We got a basic training on what the project was, and then the Upper Darby side of the equation that you saw this evening. We also will be having an informational executive session this Saturday. We've been invited by the Highland Park volunteer firefighters to come to their firehouse to meet them and find out more information about their firehouse as well, and meet the firefighters. So just wanted to let you know that council will be doing that this Saturday as well. So that's all I had. So now we'll move on to the Public Safety Committee, co-chairs Councilman Burke and Councilwoman Billups, members Councilman Silva and Councilman Tunis Jr. At this point in time, could Solicitor Richardson give us a summary of Resolution 42-20?
Excuse me, can I just make a correction? It's Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you.
Oh, did I say Bill? I'm sorry. I was looking at her name.
It's okay.
Sorry, thank you for that clarification. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Wentz. This is Resolution 42-20. This is a resolution for parking meter spaces to be reserved for handicapped persons at the location behind 20 South 69th Street, parking meter 102.
Great, thank you. Can we get a motion to approve Resolution 42-20?
So approved.
Seconded.
Okay,
I just wanted to, all right, never mind. I just had a comment.
we're not there yet. Any questions or concerns? Councilman Tunis?
Yeah, I just wanted to urge my colleagues that to approve this. This location is currently the only voter services center in Upper Darby. I don't know if how many of you been through 69th Street, where a lot of people are lining up. They're trying to figure out different voter information, and a lot of those people happen to use the handicap parking spaces. So I just wanted to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Councilman Silva?
Yeah, actually, following up to what my colleague, Mr. Tunis said, it's also the county, I believe that's the county health office as well. So it's a very wise place to locate a handicap spot.
Thank you. That was a very good point. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, please turn on your microphones. Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 42-20, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say your name. Ayes have it. Thank you. Unanimous. Great. So next up, we have Finance and Appropriations Committee co-chairs.
Councilwoman Wentz, just one question for clarification. Just for
Sure.
the public record, can you just please state the time at Highland Park on Saturday, please, for the public?
Well, it's the council's invited.
Okay, only the council. Okay,
The public's not invited, the council's invited.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes, it's not, yeah, it's not that kind of thing. They're not expecting the entire population of Highland Park to show up at their door.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, they wanted to show council about their firehouse and a chance for us to meet them and learn about their firehouse.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Volunteer firefighters have told us that their houses are open, and if residents wanted to, not during a call, wanted to go and, speak with them, my understanding is they're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yes, thank you. All right, sorry, I'm sorry, I missed my pace. Okay, so next up is Finance and Appropriations Committee, co-chairs Councilman Gwynn and Silva, council members Blackwell and Burke. Solicitor Richardson, can you give us a summary of Resolution 43-20?
Thank you. This is a resolution authorizing the application to the 2020 PICO Green Region Open Space program for the design of the Cardington Newtown Trail Rail Project. This is basically now therefore be it resolved by the Upper Darby Township Council hereby approves this project and authorizes application to the PICO Green Region Open Space Program in the amount of $10,000, and that the township commits to the expenditure of matching funds in the amount of $10,000 necessary for the project's success. So ends the reading.
Great, thank you. Can we get a motion to approve resolution number 43-20?
I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Okay. Was that Phillips?
Yes.
Great. Okay, are there any questions or concerns on this resolution? I see Councilman Burke. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Wentz. Do we know what part of the trail it is or what's planned for it, or we're just waiting to get the matching money and then decide what gets done?
No, there is a preliminary plan. We've been working with PICO. The entire trail is in PICO right away, and it extends from Pembroke to Marshall, and then there's an extension from along Ruskin Lane to Long Lane. It's all PICO right away. That's all it is.
No, I didn't know what the plan was for it. That's all. What's?
It's a plan from 2011
Okay.
that should put together with the DVERCP, and we're just trying to follow through because it's a good plan. It would really, and the good thing about it is that we would be working with East Lansdowne, makes it multi-municipal, and just makes it more attractive for grant money. So, and people walk it all the time. I mean, there's it's already used, but it'd be nice to make it like an official, really nice path. And I'll just say this too. This is going to take 2 or 3 years. Just because we apply for a grant doesn't mean it's happening anytime soon. It means that the design study gets done and all this other stuff. I mean, these are just, I think it's a good plan. I hope you support it on council, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Great.
Just a small amount of money. I didn't know how much could be done with that small amount of money. That's all.
So it's a matching grant. So they give 10,000, we give 10,000, and then like a design study gets done.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
But that's the part. All the trails need this kind of thing. It's a process. But thank you for asking.
Great. And then I see Councilman Gwynn. Go ahead.
It's part of the circuit trails. It's a segmental part that'll be used as part of the circuit trails to out the county.
Correct.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of resolution number 43-20, am I on the right one? Yes. Yep. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say your name. Great. Unanimous. Ayes have it. Cool. Also, Councilman Gwynn and Silva, I think you all had something to share with us.
Matt, you want to go?
You guys, you have that letter, the memo to read for us?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, there'll be a public hearing will be held by Township Council on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020, approximately 5 minutes after the end of the scheduled 7 p.m. meeting, and also on Wednesday, November 18th, 2020, at the beginning of the scheduled 7 p.m. meeting for the purpose of reviewing Upper Darby Township's budget for the year 2021. Due to current CDC recommendations, council members will be participating remotely, and the meeting will be streamed to the public via YouTube Live at https://www.youtube.com/Upper Darby TWP. For those on Facebook, you can watch it from the Upper Darby Township Council page. For the October 21st, 2020 public hearing, residents can call in starting Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 at 12 p.m. until Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. to 484-393-5861, or they may email their comments to comments, COMMENTS, at upperdarby.org with their name and address, and they will be read into the public record during the public comment section of the meeting for up to 30 minutes. Any comments not read into the record at that time will be sent to council if received by 7 p.m. on October 21st, 2020. For the November 18th public meeting, for a public hearing, residents can call in starting on Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 at 12 p.m. until Wednesday, November 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to the phone number 484-393-5861, or they could also email their comments to comments@upperdarby.org with their name and address, and they will be read into the record during the public comment section of the meeting for up to 30 minutes. Any comments not read into the record at that time will be sent to council if received by 7 p.m. on November 18th, 2020.
Thank you.
That is-
Thank you. Great. Okay, so okay, I forgot you had another resolution. So there's another resolution. So if Solicitor Kilkenny can give us a summary of resolution number 44-20.
Sure. Let's see. This was discussed at the last council meeting. So I'm just going to read the therefore clauses. This was what is charging as pass-through costs for legal professionals and engineering professionals for different kinds of land developments. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Upper Darby Township Council hereby adopts the following subdivision and/or land development escrows. 1, major land development subdivision, $4,000. 2, minor land development subdivision, $2,000. 3, simple residential lot line change or a 2-lot residential subdivision, $500. 4, a township professional service review. 1, a minimum of $500 shall be charged to the escrow account to cover all township administrative fees and professional fees associated with the initial opening of the account and reviews. Therefore, 100% of all costs authorized by provision of the MPC and incurred for reviews or services shall be charged to the escrow account on a monthly basis. The deductions from the escrow account shall be the amounts charged by the professional consultants or by their then current municipal rates. The township determines the application is for one which such costs or review are likely to exceed the escrow. The applicant may be required to pay into the escrow account in advance over the amount of costs. For major subdivision and land developments, if funds in the escrow account are depleted to 50% of less than the original balance, the applicant shall make an additional escrow deposit sufficient to cover any deficit and establish the escrow account to its original balance. Any excess fees remaining in the escrow account after the application is withdrawn or recorded shall be refunded to the applicant. There's a repeal or severability clause. Thank you very much, Council President Wentz.
Great, thank you. Can we get a motion to approve resolution 44-20? I see.
I'd like to make a motion.
Gwen,
I like to second that. Oh, sorry. Michelle had it.
all right, Phillips. Okay, great. Are there any questions or concerns on this resolution? Oh, Councilman Silva, go for it.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think that this is I think that this is good that we're doing that we should, the professional fees for these development projects are are real. They have a real monetary cost, and that, you know, by doing this, it's a responsible foot forward that will, you know, the taxpayers wouldn't be burdened with the fees of the professional costs for like redevelopment projects. So yeah, I'm glad that we're doing this, and I fully support this resolution.
Great, thank you. Any other council members? Okay, seeing none, turn your microphones on. All those in favor of approving resolution 44-20, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Say your name. Ayes have it. Great, unanimous. Again, you guys rock. Okay, so next up, we have the Planning, Zoning, and Building Code Committee. Co-chairs Councilman Gwynn and Councilwoman Billups, and members Councilman Tunis and Bonnet, Tunis Jr. and Bonnet. At this point in time, can Solicitor Kilkenny fill us in on what's been going on with the continuation of the public hearing of the curative amendment regarding 359 Owen Avenue?
Sure. We received, if you may remember, Mr. Ewald represented the township's interest at an extensive public hearing on a validity challenge to our ordinance related to 359 Owen Avenue. In the subsequent days, we were contacted by Mr. Buckler, applicant's counsel, who was interested in some kind of settlement related to this. On the 29th of September, he forwarded to Mr. McSween, our zoning officer, a request that the matter be stayed while the settlement was going on, to include possible court settlement. So what happened in the interim is council and executive session and members of council and the mayor worked out a compromise for 359 Owen Avenue, which I think will save a great deal of money for the township. As you saw, the applicant had deep pockets, hired a good expert and good counsel. Likely this could have been gone to the Court of Common Pleas, maybe to the Commonwealth Court and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, costing the township tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So there was a compromise hammered out between all the parties. And what we'll do is, per the home rule charter, the mayor actually settles the litigation. But because this is going to require a zoning change, that's of course a council action for the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and read the terms of the terms of the compromise, and then perhaps someone could, after I go ahead and do so, and if there's any questions, make a motion to authorize us moving forward with this. And what would really happen is there's an existing zoning appeal from 2018 from a decision of our zoning hearing board related to this property. So in land use appeals, their judges give great deference and encourage parties to settle. So we're going to use that older zoning appeal, which is still out there, to memorialize the terms of this agreement. And let me go ahead and read them for you right now. Hold on a second. Let's pull up my email. Okay. All right. Whereas Benedetto Owen Avenue LP is the owner of 359 Owen Avenue in Upper Darby Township, whereas Benedetto filed an application before the zoning hearing board requesting a variance to allow it to expand parking lot of 359 Owen Avenue and such parking for the benefit of a medical practice located across the street from the subject property at 2221 Garrett Road. Whereas 359 Owen Avenue contains an existing residential duplex use, whereas the zoning hearing board denied the variance application, resulting in the above captioned appeal. Whereas Benedetto subsequently filed a curative amendment application with the township seeking to change the zoning to add 359 Owen Avenue to the corridor residential office overlay district, with the intention to change the use of the property to a medical office use, whereas there exists a series of enforcement actions and prior zoning appeals leading to the above captioned appeal. Whereas the parties wish to make a full, complete, and final settlement of the issue, and whereas these recitals expressly made part of the agreement. 1, the township agrees that the zoning ordinance and zoning map shall be amended to include 359 Owen Avenue in the corridor residential office overlay district. 2, the township agrees and stipulates that the proposed medical office use presented in the curative amendment hearing satisfies the special exception standards of the corridor residential office overlay district, and no hearing before the zoning hearing board shall be necessary to approve such use. 3, Benedetto Owen LP agrees and stipulates that any plans for the renovation and or development of 359 Owen Avenue as a medical office use must conform to all standards of the township ordinance and the corridor residential office overlay district. 4, Benedetto will reconfigure the parking such that all ingress and egress for 359 Owen Avenue will be from Garrett Road. The driveway from Owen Avenue will be demolished and restored to the landscape state. 5, Benedetto will petition the United States Postal Service to change the address of 359 Owen Avenue to a Garrett Road address. 6, in the process of renovation, Benedetto will improve the exterior appearance of the property, including without limitation painting of the entire exterior. 7, Benedetto will post a sign in the parking lot advising people parking there to cross Garrett Road as the signalized intersection with Lansdowne Avenue and not mid-block nor at a unprotected intersection with Owen Avenue. 8, during any time in which 359 Owen Avenue is used as off-site parking, Benedetto will advise all employees and patients that they should not be crossing Garrett Road mid-block nor at the unprotected intersection with Owen Avenue. 9, Benedetto agrees to contribute $2,500 towards the implementation of the planned traffic calming improvements on the 300 block of Owen Avenue. 10, Benedetto Owen Avenue, on behalf of itself, its heirs, executors, personal representatives, and various language, has or may have had against any released township parties, whether apparent and discovered, agreement with a rise to this reference above. Township agrees to release any claims it has against Benedetto, so both parties agree to a mutual release. 11, Upper Darby Township agrees that the following enforcement actions will be terminated with prejudice. Upper Darby Township zoning enforcement of 2/28/2018. Upper Darby Township L&I versus Benedetto in district court. Benedetto agrees that the following appeals shall be marked, settled, and continued and ended. The application of Benedetto Owen before the zoning board of Upper Darby Township. B, Benedetto Owen LP versus zoning hearing board of Upper Darby Township. Notwithstanding the above, the release does not prohibit any party from seeking to enforce the settlement agreement. The agreement and covenants and exhibits herewith are the entire agreement between the parties. The parties expressly agree and state that they have consulted with their respective attorneys. The agreement shall be executed in counterparts. The parties and the signatories represent and warrant that they have the authority to enter this agreement, and failure by a party to enforce any of the rights in this agreement shall not be deemed the waiver of this right which the party has under the agreement. And then there are various signature blocks. So what would happen is if Upper Darby Council was okay with this, Mr. Ewald will submit this to Judge Wheeland, who in the Court of Common Pleas, who is handling the open appeal, say that the two parties have a settlement related to this, and then hopefully it closes the matter out. So if council were okay with it, I would just like, even though it's the mayor's prerogative for the home rule charter, settle litigation, because there's a zoning change involved and council would be required to do that, I would suggest a motion be made to approve or affirm moving ahead with the settlement agreement. The judge could always reject it, but it's highly unlikely.
Okay, so at this point in time, can we get a motion to approve the settlement of 359 Owen Avenue?
So moved.
So I saw Sadiq. And who was second?
Councilman Barnett.
Okay. No, wait, Councilman Barnett, you're muted. You gotta unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. I was not seconding that. I
You
just
have a
thought.
question. Okay. Who was the second? I heard a second, but okay, Ms. Phillips, thank you. Okay, great. So, Councilman Barnett, since I know you have a question, please go forward with your question. And Sadiq, I see your hand for a question. So, go ahead, Councilman Barnett.
Thank you, Madam President. Frankly, I find that this is a pretty reasonable settlement. But I guess that's my personal view, and my personal view, I don't think is as important right now in the final determination of this. But I do have a question as to whether the residents who live around that property are aware of this proposed settlement, and whether or not, in fact, they are pleased by the effects that it will have on them should we approve it.
I do not have personal knowledge of that, but I know no resident requested party status at any of the court hearings. So that's all I can say related to that.
No one has, this was not.
No, they didn't request party status at the court hearings. I was president one, and I did check, and there were no residents that asked for that. So, but I'm sure they don't know the details of the settlement other than, advertisement of this tonight and it being on the agenda. That's it.
Is there an urgency to approve this tonight? Should it be taken to the people to get their position on it? In all fairness to them, particularly those who initially objected to the use. Again, I think it's a pretty good solution myself.
I mean, that's a policy decision for council. Yeah.
Well, it's
I mean, this from Benedetto's standpoint, again, I'm the neutral here. I was playing the referee at the hearing. To me, this is personally a very good settlement as well, and a good compromise. It's a policy decision of council, but I don't think you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of Benedetto on this. I think both parties, you split the baby, so to speak.
Right. Well, and also this settlement provides funds for the traffic calming on Owen Avenue. That is a major concern for those on Owen Avenue. Councilman Wagner, I see you. And it also takes the traffic of this property off of Owen Avenue, which also I think would help them as well. But that's just right. So yeah. So I see. I saw Councilman Sadiq's hand, and then Silva, and then Wagner, and then Gwen, just so you knew my list. So I don't know if we have an answer for you just yet, Councilman Barnett. So, okay. Councilman Sadiq, you had a comment?
Yes, I would like to say that it's a very good deal. It's a good decision, thanks to our mayor, CEO, and our solicitor make a deal like this one. And the traffic, I was worried about when it was Wayne Avenue to Garrett Road. Now they changed it to both exit and entrance from Garrett Road. So I hope it will not affect any our resident with Wayne Avenue. So it's a very good deal. I would like to go with it and move forward.
Okay. Councilman Silva?
Yes, thank you. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Sadiq. This is, as council, we were only given the opportunity to either approve or not approve of the motion. And it was a motion that I felt actually had some merit, considering the other properties that were included in the zoning overlay district. So by this settlement, it allows for certain improvements to be made and mandated that we would have had no ability to do. And I do agree that I believe that the mayor and the administration did an excellent job putting this settlement together, and I'm wholeheartedly in support of it. I also believe too, to my other colleague's question, Mr. Bennett's question, that by removing the sidewalk or by removing the driveway to Owen Avenue, and by making all ingress and egress at Garrett Road, it also alleviates the traffic issues that would be for the residents in that area, which on Owen Avenue, which would be the primary concern, as their neighbors on Garrett are actually businesses enjoying the overlay district. So yeah, I'm wholeheartedly for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wagner?
It has to be said that Don raises a good point about whether any of the residents nearby are opposed to this, but nonetheless, even if some of them are, the fact is that the alternative here is only litigation, and that's very expensive, could become very expensive very fast. So I think we have to accept the risk that some residents may not be completely in favor of it, yet overall, it's something that we need to do.
Thank you. Councilman Gwynn? You need to unmute yourself.
See.
There you
I
go.
just had a quick question. There was some discussion regarding the surface, whether it was going to be a permeable surface or not, and I saw that the resolution was mute with regards to that. I just
Mr. Ewald, I talked to Mr. Ewald. He reached out to Mr. Buckler, and he spoke to his client, and they were not amenable to that. They'll comply with all grading and permitting required by current township codes, but they thought maintenance of pervious materials was too time consuming and costly.
Thank you for updating me.
Okay. I see Councilman Burnett. Just before Councilman Burnett speaks, is there anyone else, since he's already spoken? Councilman Burke and then Burnett.
Thank you, President Wentz. I believe when we spoke about this in the beginning, when it first started, the only two addresses that actually came up was 316 and 318, which I believe is at the bottom of the hill. One seemed to be okay with it because it was kind of vacant and it was going to do some work. And the other one really didn't care as long as it was going to be taken care of. So they were at the bottom of the street. Nobody closer to the house, address-wise, made a comment on it.
Thank you for that observation. Great. And Councilman Burnett?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I stress that I think it's a pretty good solution too. Just a question to Solicitor Kilkenny. I think we talked about this before. Does this effectively change the zoning map?
Yeah. Yes.
So are we in essence amending the zoning ordinance by doing this?
No, we're basically saying is you're going to move forward with, you're basically agreeing that you'll go in good faith, go forward with that process.
Okay, so, but the map should be changed effectively?
Yes.
Okay.
Not right now. You'll have to go through all the processes per the MPC. But
in other words,
if council does not do that, then we're violating the settlement agreement. They can come back at us.
So there's another action required of council, which is really an ordinance.
There is. That's why I wanted this to go to council, even though the mayor can settle litigation.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Also verify that it would be a change to the overlay of the zone of that zoning.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understand the big picture. Okay, great. Are there any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the settlement for 359 Owen Avenue, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say your name. Ayes have it. It's unanimous, so thank you. That was great. Okay, great, wonderful. So Solicitor, it's your turn to give us an update on the agenda, on what you guys have been doing. You're muted, so.
Yes, our office has been very busy, as you can see from the various items on the agenda. We work with staff on a daily basis on ordinance resolutions, budget questions, follow up with council. I don't have any additional information other than a quick update that I know council was asked for publicly related to St. Eugene's. I know this came up at the last council meeting, and I sent an email to Councilor Bonnet and Feralia, as well as Mr. McBlain, who represents St. Eugene's. And I don't know if Mr. Bonnet or Ms. Feralia spoke to anyone there, but we do have a meeting now set up for either the 27th or the 30th for a walkthrough with the pastor to hopefully bring this to closure one way or the other. So that's an update from the last council meeting.
Thank you. I didn't get a chance to check the emails to see if we had gotten a response, so thank you for that update. Great. Cool. Any questions from Councilman Bonnet or Feralia on that, since you were referenced? Go ahead, Councilman Bonnet.
Thank you, Madam President. I have nothing. I have not had any further conversation, Solicitor, since our last meeting.
No, I appreciate it. Was not getting a lot of response from Mr. McBlain, so I was hoping perhaps by CCing you it would engender more conversation.
I appreciate
so I'm
being
glad it did.
included. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Feralia?
I spoke to Father yesterday, and he said that he was going to get on the parish council to set up a meeting. So I guess he spoke to them, and now this is the.
Yep, they gave us a series of dates. The 27th and the 30th works for the mayor, the CAO, Mr. Galante, and myself. And it says they work for them, so they get to pick, and we'll be out there hopefully with a site walkthrough and come to some kind of settlement.
Okay. Can you let me know? I'd like to go too. The exact date.
Sure. I'll as soon as it's confirmed, I'll give it to the CAO, who can definitely pass it on to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'd like to attend as well. So, okay. And perhaps other at-large council members would want to be there as well. I'm just
We'll
guessing.
do that, but let's keep it under a quorum, but it's just be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll put it through, when we get it, please contact the CAO. I understand you want to go, Madam President and Councilwoman Feralia. Anyone else, please contact the CAO. We just want to make sure we're keeping it.
Under quorum, yes.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Okay, so next up is old business. Does any council members have any old business to bring to council this evening? All right, I'm seeing none. Oh, Councilwoman Billups sliding it, or Blackwell sliding in at the end. I know you guys are right next to each other. My dyslexia is kicking in. Councilwoman Blackwell.
I just want to remind everybody to vote.
Thank you.
Also to remind everyone that on November the 21st is the job fair, and also the census
is October 31st. Was extended to October 31st for the census. Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else for old business? Seeing none. All right, moving on to new business. I see Councilman Tunis. Go ahead.
Yes, so I had a street cleanup for the roads of Gilport, Lamport, and Springton Road scheduled for this past Monday. However, due to the weather, it was rescheduled for this Saturday. So I'm doing 2 street cleanups this Saturday. I have one at 9 a.m. on the 200 block of Coverly Road, and then the one that was scheduled for Monday, I'll be doing at 10 a.m. Essentially, I know it's 2 street cleanups. Like I can't be everywhere at the same time. I'm going to be at both events. There's going to be various volunteers in the area that's participating. And the reason why I'm doing this, a lot of people have this misconception that like people just use street cleanups to put bandages over certain issues in the township. No, I think this events like this have multi-purposes. Like, so for example, if a resident reaches out to me and wants to do a street cleanup, that's great because that gives me a chance to invite the mayor, invite council at large members, and then in turn give people information. And that's what people really need is information on things that have been updating. So I just wanted to put that out there. I will be emailing the flyer to at-large members as well as the administration. And if there's any other council members in the neighboring districts that would like that, I will send that to you also. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Where's the
Yeah,
location of the 10 a.m. one?
We're gonna meet on Lamport and Ruskin, which will also be on the flyer. But essentially, it's just a community cleanup. The people in those neighborhoods are really connected, so they've all like encourage each other to come out together. So it should be a great day for the community cleanup. There's also a couple other cleanups that are happening in the community. I'm hoping some of my colleagues can. It slipped out of my mind. I'm hoping some of my colleagues can hopefully remember and announce them. But there's a couple other cleanups happening this weekend. I'm just hoping somebody can.
I think the mayor.
So sorry. It was in my other notebook.
Okay. So the mayor was kind of raising her hand on that, and I see Councilman Silva. So, but go ahead, Mayor. You need to unmute yourself.
So I'd like to thank Councilwoman Blackwell for bringing up the census because the deadlines have been in the court very recently, and there's a deadline for online census participation this Friday at midnight, and tomorrow is the last day to phone in your census reply. Yes, it's been like a ping pong, you know, it just keeps changing, but so it's not the 30th or the 31st, it's this week.
Oh, I heard it was the 31st. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. They honestly I think it changed yesterday or something.
It was today. The court changed it.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out today.
Thank you. The other thing in reference to Councilman Tunis's mention of the other cleanups, there are 2 cleanups on Saturday. They're with the Darby Creek Valley Association as partners with neighbors around the Swedish Ken Park and the Swedish Cabin, and also at Bloomfield in the 1st District, Councilman Bennett, right where at the end of Bloomfield past Drexel Line, you know, where the bridge is, Bloomfield continues on as a cinder road. And that's where another cleanup will be that I know of. So.
Do you know the time of those cleanups?
Those are both like 9 to 12.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then Councilman Silva had his hand up. Go ahead, Silva.
I'm sorry, the mayor already covered it, the Swedish Cabin cleanup, but yes.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? Councilwoman Blackwell?
Yes, so one more note of business. I received information that we run at risk of not being able to backlog the mail on applications. So the Delaware County Council is asking for people these are paid jobs to come in, and anyone who's looking for that job to be able to do data entry for the provisional ballots should be able to email Hesley, Heisey, Heisey, Terrells, Terrels at county@co.delaware.pa.us. So you don't have to be a county resident for these jobs. And this information was given to me.
Okay, so basically, the county is hiring people to help with the election.
Yes.
Okay, so there are a whole variety of jobs in reference to it, but they're looking to hire people. So anyone who's looking for a job that would like a chance to work for the county, there are jobs openings in the county.
Yes,
So they can check
yes.
the county website to find the jobs.
That's correct. And either they can be at Media, Chester, or either at 69th Street.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. And then also one other event that actually would have shown up on Over Old Business is there's a trunk and treat on the 31st at Arlington Cemetery. Actually, for council members, members who are creating the trunk and treat event, and as you know, anyone here, Mayor as well, who they're asking council and Mayor to, if we're available, to take part in volunteering at the trunk and treat or taking part in some way. They would love to have us. So I just wanted to forward that invite to you. I got a message today about it, so just wanted to let you know. Okay, so that's sort of new and old at the same time. So, all right, they have a Facebook event and their flyers up around the township, I believe, on the trunk and treat at Arlington Cemetery on Halloween. Go ahead, Councilman Gwynn.
I actually had a piece of old business. Barbara Ann, excuse me, Madam Mayor. How is the street cleaning going? The target practice that you're doing on Hurley?
Right, so it's there hasn't been a lot of compliance. It was started before COVID. And then you know, sort of put on hold during COVID. We're still on COVID, but we feel we're coming out of it. And so what's happened is it's the first and third Mondays of each month. And this month, October, as they have when the program was going on, and Councilman Tunis was a big part of letting the neighbors know, not just the neighbors, whoever's parked on the streets know when it's happening, but this is sort of like the last warning for people to move their cars, and after that they will be getting tickets if they're still there. It's Huntley and is it Kingston and Shelbourne, I think?
Yes, Shelbourne.
It's Huntley and Shelbourne, and yeah, the mayor is correct. We really work to get the messaging to the residents, and I've spoken to a lot of residents in that area, and they are comfortable with how it's going to go moving forward. Keep in mind, this is something that benefits the residents. All we're simply trying to do is just try to make our neighborhoods better, make our neighborhoods look cleaner. And I grew up in that area. I've seen it like that for years, and I'm just happy that we're able to take this step to fix it. So, like the mayor said, moving forward, people are going to be ticketed, and I'm sure there are going to be some people that are unhappy. But I think I did it like 4 or 5 times where I went and with the mayor twice, also just informing the public on this event. So, I mean, on this pilot program.
Yeah, it was actually council voted on it last year. It was spearheaded by then council person Sakella Coles, who's now in charge of the parking department. So the parking department is helping enforcement because we would really like it to be successful and then to expand it out to other areas. So it's a process. So
great. Thank you for the update. Councilwoman Phillips.
Thank you. So speaking of trunk or treat,
yes,
Christ Lutheran Church is having one before the on the 30th from 5 to 7. It's bag, treats, and music and fun. So they're also looking for volunteers. And if you want to volunteer, you can call 484-326-2957.
What's the address?
I can see 7240 Walnut Street, Upper Darby.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. Oh, Sadiq, you always slide in there. Go for it, buddy.
No, I was raising hand before. You don't see me, maybe.
Oh, well, I didn't see you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I should talk in public safety, but it is new business. The Church Lane down the hill and Marshall Powell Lane is a wider street. People driving, even 15 mile per hour sign is there. Still people driving. And Church Lane, same thing. The long story short, people looking for speed bump, which are talking about the pilot project going on District 7. So I think City of Philadelphia has it, speed bump. So in Upper Darby, I think we should move forward. And I don't know how long we're going to run this pilot project. It's almost more than 6 months, I think. So I'd like to go for it, and we should do like a step by step all the district.
Wait, I think you're talking about two different things. Are you talking about the street sweeping, which is a pilot program that's happening in the 7th? And then we just recently during the course of the summer, Mayor Keffer and CEO lined up meetings with Owen Avenue for speed humps as street calming. Parkview is also in line for possibly doing that, where right now there's been an officer at the other end of my street, giving out tickets to people that are blowing through the stop signs. Along with speeding, and we can't do the speeding part, but they're able to ticket them for the blowing through the stop sign. So, the speed humps haven't actually happened yet in Owen Avenue just yet. They're still working on that process. So, at least not that I'm aware of. Have we been able to input the speed humps yet on Owen Ave? Mayor or CEO?
No, so hopefully it'll be done in the next couple weeks. The orders were placed for the speed humps, but COVID has really thrown things off of whack. So these things are they were special ordered for Owen Avenue, and the wideness of the street, the width of the street, and they should be coming in really soon. So this time next week, I hope to have a more positive update on Owen Avenue, because it has been taking what feels like an excruciating amount of time, but that'll be our first pilot project with speed humps. I believe Parkview will be the second. So
I meant to say both of them, and also I am supportive of the street cleaning. It will two things. Number one thing, it will clean up our area, clean up the street, because the sweeping truck is running in the middle of the street.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Complete waste of time.
Complete wasting time and our money. Is driving through in the street. The trash is right hand side, left hand side. Don't make any sense. So I'm supportive of the pilot project going on street cleaning. And then let's move forward to clean our township. And second thing, we could be benefit with the revenue. A lot of people will get the ticket, and township will collect the revenue. So I think we should move forward. Both projects. One is street cleaning, the street hump for the safety.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else?
A quick question. Are they speed hump or speed cushions?
Humps / cushions are pretty close to the same.
Okay.
They're not, the point is they're more spread out, and they're not the speed bump, which is the, smaller, higher, which messes up with the vehicles.
Yeah.
And I believe the plan with speed cushions that you ordered was that there was spacing between them so that our emergency trucks, like the police and fire, can get through without necessarily riding over. It was the hope to be able to place them in a way that their tires fit through.
Right, right. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. All right.
Yep.
Well, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I'm seeing no more comments or concerns. Want to thank wait.
I move.
Wait. I just want to thank everyone for today. You guys did an awesome job. Thank you for all the presentations we had. That was really awesome. Go ahead, Gwen.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
I second it.
Everyone have a good night.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Have a great night.